I always believed my family was the epitome of togetherness. Growing up in Riverside, with my father working hard and my sibling, and I cherishing the moments of laughter during family game nights and holiday celebrations, life felt delightful. The aroma of freshly baked cookies wafting through the house during Christmas and the loud cheers echoed during Monopoly nights felt like the framework of a perfect childhood, keeping our family bond strong. We would sit around the dining table every Sunday, enjoying a home-cooked meal, sharing stories of the week. Nothing could break that bond. I thought to myself, this is it, this is happiness. I was the dutiful daughter, always looking to please, making life easier for my family where I could. I made time for my younger siblings' soccer practices, helped with homework, and always made sure the house was clean. It was my role to keep the peace. But looking back now, I see how naive I truly was. I never expected the truth would come crashing down on me like a freight train, shattering the illusion I so dearly held. The day started like any other, an ordinary Saturday in our modest home. The sunlight poured in through the kitchen window, illuminating the breakfast table where my father sat, paper in hand, furrowing his brows as he scanned the latest budget projections. I often watched him battle the daily grind, feeling proud of his perseverance. He wore a plain white shirt with a faded blue tie, the remnants of many hard days woven into his frayed collar. I could hear my sibling giggling in the background, eyes glued to the television, immersed in a Saturday morning cartoon. "Good morning, Dad," I called, pouring a cup of coffee for myself. The rich aroma filled the air as I stirred in a splash of cream, watching it swirl. "What do you think about going for a family hike later? The weather looks perfect." He looked up from his papers, a flicker of warmth gracing his weary eyes. "I would love that, Mia, but I have some things to finish up first," he replied, his voice tinged with regret. "Maybe after lunch. Sounds good. I can help you with whatever you need," I offered, hoping to ease his burden. I wanted him to know he didn't have to do everything alone. As I said it, I felt that familiar yearning to stand strong for my family. They needed me, and I needed them. But as I turned to head towards my father's office, a surge of curiosity bloomed within me. It was always a place filled with mystery. The smell of old paper and leather would beckon me to explore. I had every intention of picking up a few stray papers to help organize, but the moment I stepped into the dimly lit room, my heart began to race. The walls were lined with books, each a portal to another world, but it was the desk that caught my eye. It sat cluttered with paperwork, old bills, receipts, and half-finished documents. I moved through the maelstrom of papers, sifting through everything from yellowed envelopes to contemporary bank statements. My fingers danced over each item, a sense of adventure buzzing in my chest. As I rummaged, a thought flickered through my mind. What if I found something interesting that would explain that distant look in my father's eyes when he thought no one was watching? Then I stumbled on it. A stack of bank statements puffed out from underneath a pile of receipts, and my heart skipped. I felt that familiar flutter of excitement turning to dread. I hesitated for just a second before I pulled the statements into view. The first thing that struck me was the amount reflected on the top line. It was far more than I had ever imagined. I knew our family was tight on funds. I often compared prices at the grocery store and meticulously planned family meals to stretch every dollar. But this, it shattered the illusion. Perplexed, I blinked hard, convincing myself that I must have read the figures incorrectly. I dove deeper into the stack, my disbelief morphing into anger and betrayal as I read line after line. Weekly withdrawals, payments to exclusive boutiques, vacations to sunny beaches that had all been brushed aside as just a day out. My mind raced as I pieced together the truth like a cruel jigsaw puzzle. While I stressed over grocery bills with barely $2,000 in our accounts, I discovered my mother had been living a secret life, flaunting a designer lifestyle without a care for the true cost. "No, not her," I whispered, my voice shaking, disbelief choking me. "What is happening?" The betrayal clawed at my heart, unraveling the warmth of my memories, turning my childhood bliss into a twisted web of deception. The blue sky outside the window seemed to fade into ominous clouds. I felt the walls of my perfect family closing in around me. I sank onto the floor, the gust of betrayal pressing down on my chest like an anchor. Questions flooded my mind. How could she do this? Why would she want to hide something like this from us? Was any of it real? The nurturing mother I had always believed in felt like a ghost in a costume, playing a part for our family while pulling strings behind the scenes. I felt dizzy, as though the ground beneath me had crumbled away. Just as I was about to stand up, my younger sibling's voice broke through my turmoil. "Mia, what are you doing in there?" "Just cleaning," I replied quickly, stuffing the statements back into the pile. I glanced toward the door, hoping they wouldn't notice my trembling hands or the anger flushing my cheeks. "You know how Dad is with paperwork." "Okay, just wanted to see if you wanted to watch cartoons with me," they replied, cheerful oblivion in their voice. I could hear the clicks of cartoon characters echoing from the living room as they scampered back. "Sure, I'll be right there," I muttered, forcing a smile to mask the confusion swirling in my chest. I needed space to think, to process the shocking revelation I had uncovered. As I shuffled back into the living room, my siblings' laughter felt grating against my newfound anxiety. I forced myself to sit beside them on the worn couch, my mind still tangled in the web of deceit. The colors of the cartoons blurred into dullness as I tried to concentrate, but the reality I had stumbled upon consumed my thoughts. Memories flooded back to family vacations spent at the lake, swimming, fishing, and laughing under the sun. I had thought we were making memories, but now I began to wonder, were we just a facade holding up my mother's extravagant lifestyle? "Hey, Mia, you okay?" my sibling asked innocently, not noticing the storm brewing inside me. "Yeah, just tired," I replied absently, my voice lacking warmth. I reached out, ruffling their hair, numbing the unraveling truths I had discovered. "Okay, you seem weird," they said, crinkling their nose in a way that reminded me so much of our father. "Can we go hiking after lunch? I want to find cool rocks." "Of course. We can look for the biggest one," I said, masking my anger and confusion with forced enthusiasm. But inside, my mind was now a tempest of conflicting emotions, swirls of betrayal and hurt mixing with the love I had for my family. I felt trapped, caught between wanting to expose the truth and holding on to the remnants of a life I cherished. As lunch approached, I sat at the dining table, the aroma of my father's famous spaghetti floating through the air as he stirred the sauce. My mind replayed the bank statements like a gnarled record skipping on its track. Each line was a reminder of the lies hidden beneath the warm family meals, the laughter, and the joyful moments we shared. "What are you thinking about, Mia?" my father's voice cut through my thoughts. I looked up, finding him studying me intently, his brow drawn in concern. "Oh, just thinking about hiking later," I said, forcing a smile, hoping he wouldn't catch the tension hidden behind it. "Good. You know how relaxing it can be once we get into the woods," he replied, a familiar glint of hope lighting up his eyes. "We need to cherish our time together." I nodded, feeling the weight of my revelation settle deeper into my chest. What kind of family was built on secrets? I didn't know how long I could keep this bottled up inside me. As the sound of cheerful chatter and clinking silverware filled the kitchen, I felt both suffocated and determined. I would uncover the truth, the full extent of my mother's deception, and wouldn't let it destroy the memories I had of our family. No, I would not let this laundry of secrets drift through our lives. Without fully realizing it, I had entered the first act of my unplanned revenge, a righteous quest for truth masked beneath the blanket of love for my family. That innocent day of hiking would serve as the starting point, the moment I'd bury the illusion and rise to face the reality of my mother's deceitful world. Each hiking step we took together underscored my resolve. I would reclaim my family's narrative. With all the clarity I had, I would bring the puppet master to light in the days that followed. My resentment morphed into a relentless fury that clawed at my insides, every passing moment amplifying the doubts I had about my family, about my mother. The sun poured through the windows of our riverside home, but instead of bringing warmth, it only highlighted the fraying edges of my sanity. I could hardly look at my mother as she floated through the living room, a vision of confidence with an air of unfounded superiority that made my stomach churn. She dressed as if the world were her runway, her laughter ringing hollow in my ears, echoing off the walls like an unwelcome intruder. It was dizzying, hearing her delightful chimes when all I wanted was to drown in silence and darkness. "Mia, darling, have you seen the new curtains? Aren't they just divine?" She chirped one morning, adjusting a framed photo of herself where sunlight caught her perfectly manicured fingers. I could not stop the sigh that escaped me, barely audible but filled with the weight of the world. "What about the legacy you've left me? What about the betrayal?" I muttered under my breath, but I knew she wouldn't hear. Her world was too bright for my shadows. I confronted her that evening, the air thick with unease as I stood my ground in front of her, hands clenched into fists at my sides. "You need to explain yourself," I demanded, my voice firmer than I felt. "Why did you take all that money? Why did you think it was okay?" She waved me away as if I were nothing but a bothersome insect buzzing around her head. "Oh, Mia, you are being so dramatic," she replied, her eyes dancing with a mixture of amusement and irritation. "This is merely family legacy, something you need to learn to appreciate." The way she dismissed me stung like acid, the irony cutting deeper than I thought possible. Here I stood, a puppet merely left with the broken strings while she twisted them into knots, completely unaware of the chaos surrounding our lives. The bitter truth was that the legacy I was left with was one of financial shadows and abuses, a facade she so proudly exhibited to the world outside, leaving no room for anyone to see the cracks. I watched her glide around with oblivion, her confidence a slap in the face, making the blood roar in my ears. Family legacy. I spat, frustration fizzling within me. "You've betrayed us and you think it's a legacy." She gave me a pitiful smile, the kind that made me feel smaller than I already was, and sighed. "You are just not seeing the bigger picture, dear." Every ounce of steam I had gained evaporated with her words. I could feel my face flush with anger, and I wanted to scream, to push her until she understood the pain that filled our home, but the sheer futility of it all made me falter. "You're blind to what you are doing to this family." I was nearly crying out, emotion strangling my voice. "You are tearing everything apart with your greed." The flicker in her eyes briefly shifted from amusement to something closer to irritation before turning her back, whether in dismissal or avoidance, I could not tell. A wave of despair crashed over me, and I choked back tears. I echoed into the deep, empty chasm of my pillow at night, screaming into it because it felt like the only way to release the suffocating weight of betrayal pressing on my chest. Each muffled cry was a sorrowful oath, a solemn promise to reclaim the shred of dignity that had not yet slipped from my grasp. How could she prioritize status over family? How could she be so self-absorbed to not notice the harm she inflicted upon our lives? As the days turned into weeks, the moments of isolation stretched on, each breakfast, lunch, and dinner filled with tense silences, the clattering of forks against plates a painful reminder of the growing rift. My sibling roamed the house with blissful ignorance, laughing and chatting with our mother, believing that the world was still running as it should. I could see the flicker of concern in their younger eyes, though, a subtle reflection of the strain looming over our household. Every now and then, I could feel their gaze shift towards me, searching for something they couldn't yet define. They needed to know. I had to make them understand the truth. "Mia, why do you look so serious?" they would ask, their voice laced with an innocent curiosity. "Is everything okay?" I would offer a weak smile, the corners of my mouth twitching in a feeble attempt to mask the turmoil brewing inside of me. "Everything is great," I would reply, pressing my lips together to suppress the emotional chaos. Inside, I was reeling, the swirling thoughts insistent, screaming that I was alone in my conviction to fight back against this madness. I felt like an island, surrounded by a sea of betrayal, and I was gearing up for a storm that would surely break. I began to collect evidence of my mother's betrayal, piecing together the fractured timeline of numbers and transactions, each figure representing a scapegoat for her gluttony. The walls had taken on an almost oppressive weight, crammed with financial records I had amassed over countless insomniac nights, numbly tapping away at my computer. I navigated through dated banking statements, calculations, and annotations, trying to comprehend the staggering total she had siphoned off from us, off our lives. It was disheartening to see the figures scroll endlessly, digital ghosts of the trust I had once placed in her hands while she lived lavishly. I felt the promise of revenge start to bloom with each damning detail I uncovered. I had been manipulated, deceived into thinking she cared about us and our well-being when in reality, our family was nothing more than a treasure chest for her. $8,000 for that ridiculous dress? Really? I murmured to myself in disbelief, the numbers flickering before my eyes like a haunting shadow. Each click of my keyboard felt like another step towards liberation, closer to the sweet satisfaction that brewed at the back of my mind. Every number proved how manipulated I had been, feeding my resolve, bringing to life the tempest I felt boiling beneath the surface. I felt the world around me slowly shift, the air growing thicker with each day until it became almost unbearable. My mother continued her charade, and I turned inward, scheming and plotting behind the scenes as her laughter turned into mere white noise, pressing against my resolve to confront her. With each passing day, I took a hard look at what I was ready to do. It was not merely vengeance I sought. It was justice, an awakening, a raw exposure of the truth that had been buried beneath the masquerade she wore like a cloak. Would she unravel? Would she understand? Or would she continue to dismiss me, treating me like an emotional child too dramatic to comprehend the true nature of family? The answers lurked just out of reach, taunting me with the burden of uncertainty. But whatever shadows she was hiding from the world, I would shine a light on them. With my heart racing, I knew enough was enough. It was time to take back what was rightfully ours. I could feel the adrenaline rush, the ceaseless fight inside me igniting with renewed purpose. I would not let the legacy of greed drown me. I would rise from the depths and expose the true reality of our so-called family legacy. The family reunion was upon us, and I could hardly contain the whirlwind of emotions racing through me. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a warm glow over the backyard. Laughter and cheer spilled over the edges of the otherwise perfect day, like the sparkling lemonade served in ornate glass pitchers. I could smell the familiar scents of barbecue wafting through the air, mixed with hints of grass and flowers. It was a vibrant scene filled with family members, all smiling and relishing the rare occasions we gathered. But underneath the veneer of happiness, inside of me boiled a storm of anticipation mixed with dread. I stood at the edge of the group, watching my family engage in light-hearted conversation, feeling like an outsider looking in. I rehearsed my words in my mind, like a scene from a play, waiting for the right moment to drop my bombshell. The chatter was infectious, laughter erupting here and there, but each peal only intensified my resolve. I could see my mother flitting about with ease, the center of attention as usual. She was showcasing yet another designer handbag, holding it up as if it were a trophy won at a prestigious competition. "It fabulous?" she exclaimed, her voice a pitch higher than normal, almost sing-songy. Her excitement radiated, and I felt my stomach flip. I felt sickened watching relatives crowd around her, blind to the truth that lingered beneath the surface. They admired her, oblivious to the reality, unaware that they were celebrating a facade. "My dear, you always have the best taste." One of my aunts cooed, reaching out to touch the soft leather. They were like moths drawn to a flame, so blinded by the glitz that they failed to see the darkness lurking behind her brightly painted smile. How long could I let this charade continue? How many more family gatherings would I endure while the truth gnawed at my insides like a feral beast? "Can I borrow that next time you go shopping?" Another relative joked, laughter rising and filling the air with a sweet, deceptive melody. My heart raced, each beat echoing in my ears like a war drum. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the documents tucked securely inside the small envelope I carried. It felt like a ticking time bomb, each second passing driving me closer to the moment when I would finally reveal the truth. "Ugh, why did she even buy that?" I whispered to myself, my voice barely audible above the cheerful noise around me. It was maddening to see all their praise showered upon her, each compliment feeding her ever-inflating ego. The quiet voice inside me cried out for justice, for liberation. And I would finally deliver it. Picking at the edge of the envelope, I shifted my gaze around. I could see my cousins, some bouncing with their children, the echoes of giggles carrying on the breeze, while the older relatives spoke in hushed tones, sharing stories and secrets that danced through the air like dandelion seeds. I had heard those stories 1,000 times, and today they felt hollow compared to the truth I carried. My heart pounded louder now, the anticipation filling me with a potent mix of exhilaration and fear. As my mother laughed again, the sound slicing through the blissful atmosphere like a discordant note, I felt my resolve strengthen. She was basking in their adoration, oblivious of the chaos that lay just beneath the facade of her perfect life. Was she even capable of feeling the weight of her actions, or was she so absorbed in the role she played that she had forgotten the reality? Suddenly, the moment arrived. The conversation shifted, a lull settling over the crowd as everyone turned their gaze to the food being served. It was now or never. I could feel every fiber of my being urging me on. I cleared my throat, the sound swallowed by the wind. My hands trembled around that envelope, the cool paper feeling slick beneath my fingertips. "Excuse me, everyone," I called, my voice ringing out and cutting through the light-hearted banter like a sword. Heads turned, the collective gaze of my family converging on me, each face a mixture of curiosity and anticipation. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" I continued, my heart hammering against my ribcage. The laughter faded, replaced by the uncertain hum of confusion. "I have something important to share, something you all deserve to know." "What is it, dear?" one of my aunts asked, a frown creasing her brows, concern shadowing her features as she sensed the shift in the atmosphere. I took a deep breath, the air thick and laced with the weight of my intentions. "I know how much we all love family gatherings, and how easy it is to get swept up in the stories we tell ourselves, but—" I felt the heat rise to my cheeks, the flood of emotions threatening to spiral out of control. "I think it is time we face a very ugly truth about our very own." I pointed towards my mother, and in that instant, the chatter turned to deafening silence. My mother's face, which moments earlier glowed with pride as she continued to show off her handbag, drained of color, morphing into confusion laced with dread. Gasps echoed around the yard, a collective intake of breath that marked my point of no return. "Mom, you have taken nearly $50,000 from our family's finances," I shouted, the revelation cascading from my lips. The room went completely silent, and I felt electric jolts of energy coursing through me as the impact of my words settled into the minds of my relatives. The whispers began immediately, rippling through the crowd like a wave. "What?" one cousin exclaimed, disbelief etched into every line of her face. "Are you serious?" another relative added, their voice fraught with incredulity. "What do you mean?" My mother's voice trembled, a mixture of anger and shock coloring her words. She stepped forward, that designer handbag now clutched defensively against her chest, as if it could shield her from the reality I was unveiling. "Do you really need me to explain?" I replied, a sense of liberation swelling within me. "You have allowed everyone to believe you were the perfect mother, the perfect daughter. But underneath that mask lies a trail of deception. You used our family's trust and turned it into your personal shopping spree. Enough." She screamed, her face contorting into a mask of rage. "You do not know what you are talking about." "Oh, but I do," I countered, my voice steady despite the chaos swirling around me. My heart fluttered with fear, but also with a resounding surge of confidence. "I have the documents right here." I waved the envelope in the air, reveling in the way it shimmered in front of everyone like a beacon of truth. Documents. My uncle interjected, brows raised, taking a step closer with curiosity glimmering in his eye. "What documents?" I opened the envelope, the rustle of paper amplifying the tension in the air. "These are bank statements, receipts, all proof of what you have done. This is not something I made up, Mom. This is real." I tossed one of the papers to the ground, letting it flutter before the crowd. "You have been living a lie." Murmurs erupted again, feet shifting glances, and a buzz of disbelief circled like bees around a blooming garden. "Let me see that," one of my cousins demanded, leaning forward, drawn in by the scent of scandal. My mother's expression shifted, desperation narrowing her eyes. "You can't do this to me, not here, not now." "But I must," I replied, my tone firm yet controlled. "You have to face the truth, and so do we. It is time for everyone to see you for who you really are." "I have given you everything, and this is how you repay me." She spat, her voice laced with venom and defiance as she crossed her arms, her prized handbag still clutched tight like a lifeline. "Everything, or just the illusion of everything," I countered, my voice rising, emboldened by her fury. "Look around you, Mom. What have you built for us except a house of cards poised to fall? While you flaunted your wealth, we were falling apart. Do you see how many people are hurt because of you?" The expressions on the family members' faces shifted, a tapestry of emotions weaving through disbelief, sympathy, and disgust. I could see them processing, slowly awakening from the spell my mother had cast over them for years. For once, she was the one facing judgment, and the exhilaration of that realization took my breath away. "Do not let her fool you," she shouted, her voice rising above the din. "This is just jealousy. She cannot stand to see me happy." But her words fell flat, a desperate plea that only served to cement the shift in the atmosphere. I could see my aunts glancing at each other, uncertainty blooming in their expressions. "Happy?" I asked incredulously. "Is this happiness? Living in a gilded cage while the family suffers? It's time for the truth to come out. It's time for everyone to know the real you." More gasps followed. The crowd shifted uneasily, and my pulse quickened, each beat resonating with a sense of victory. I could see my mother's expression darkening, rage now mingling with a sense of panic. The very foundation of her carefully constructed world was crumbling right before her eyes, and it was intoxicatingly liberating. "She's just trying to ruin our family. Look at this." My mother turned to the assembled crowd, her voice frantic and strained. "She has no idea what she is doing." "I have been the best mother I could be. I sacrificed everything for her." "You sacrificed nothing but your integrity," I retorted, my heart racing with the rush of confrontation. "Stop this, Mia, we can talk about this later," she pleaded, but the tension in the yard had shifted irrevocably, the chinks in her armor exposed under the blaring light of truth. "I don't think so, Mom. You don't get to run away from this anymore." I took one step forward, my energy surging. The moment felt monumental, a seismic shift, the breaking of chains that had held me in a stifling grip for too long. Around me, the family buzzed with disbelief, and the air thickened with their mounting fury. I felt a sense of exhilaration mixed with relief as I prepared to unveil the evidence, the last piece of the puzzle that would shatter her illusion. "This is only the beginning," I whispered to myself, a smile creeping across my face as I watched my mother's world begin to unravel. And within me, a sense of justice bloomed in the most unexpected corners of my heart. The moment of confrontation lingered like a thick fog, wrapping itself around the room and making it hard to focus. I could hear the muffled heartbeat in my chest, pounding with the weight of the moment. It was surreal, as if the clock had frozen in place, each second stretching out longer than I'd ever experienced. My relatives were gathered around me, a growing army demanding accountability, solidarity binding us together against a common enemy. The tension crackled in the air, sharp and electric, as accusations and defenses bounced back and forth like a volleyball in a heated game. Her expression was a strange mix of fury and embarrassment, the crimson blush creeping up her neck betraying her. In that moment, something shifted deep within me. I hadn't expected to feel an unexpected rush of satisfaction, watching her squirm, the tables finally turning on her. I could see my aunt with her arms crossed tightly over her chest, giving my mother the kind of glare that could roast marshmallows. "You must repay us, and you know it," my aunt shouted, her voice trembling with intensity. It was extraordinary to witness the metamorphosis of us from voiceless pawns, trampled and dismissed, into a united front demanding justice. The room that had once echoed with the sound of my mother's laughter now reverberated with outrage. "Did you not think we knew?" my cousin added, his brow furrowed in a powerful frown. "You flaunt your new car and your designer clothes while the rest of us struggle to make ends meet. How is that fair?" There was a hint of venom in his voice, and it pierced through the haze of disbelief that had clouded my mind for years. My cousins had always thought my mother was something akin to royalty, grace incarnate. They had spoken in hushed tones about her wealth, her lifestyle, her ability to charm her way into any conversation. They had never seen behind the curtain, and now that curtain was being torn down, exposing the twisted strings of manipulation. "Enough of this," my mother spat back, her voice breaking through the growing cacophony. "You don't understand what I have had to do to get here. I have worked tirelessly, sacrificed so much for this family. Do you think I enjoy the harsh judgments?" Her eyes darted nervously, seeking an anchor in the sea of condemnation. "Worked tirelessly?" I echoed, my anger igniting like a match struck against a rough surface. "You enjoy those luxuries while we struggle to get by. That is not love, it is greed." The tremble in my voice was barely audible, but the conviction was there, rising like a tide. The words hung in the air as tangible as the tension, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. I had finally found my voice, and it felt like reclaiming a part of myself that had been buried for too long. "Greed," she scoffed, the disdain spilling from her lips like venom. "If only you knew what true hard work meant. I've sacrificed my dreams for this family." The sneer on her face was strange, unfamiliar. The admiration that filled the room moments ago shifted into a potent mixture of disdain and solidarity against her. The very air felt charged, as if a storm was brewing around us. "Sacrificed or stolen," I countered, the words rising unbidden to my lips. I could hear the murmurings of agreement among my relatives, a chorus of voices supporting this uprising. "You've been manipulating us for years, and it's time to face the consequences." There was power in those words, a power I had never held before. I felt the burden of their expectations begin to lift as a wave of clarity swept over me. The atmosphere thickened, and I could taste the bitterness of her deceit on my tongue. It was pungent and sharp, like spoiled fruit. "That's not true," she bellowed, but the desperation in her voice gave her away. I watched as her world crumbled around her, the credibility she clung to slipping through her fingers like sand. Witnessing this fragile facade begin to fracture was unsettling but exhilarating all at once. My relatives rallied closer, as if forming a protective shield around me. "Do you not remember the time you took money from my college fund to cover your debts?" my brother shouted, his voice raw with emotion. It felt monumental hearing him speak up, pushing through the silence, the shame that had silenced him so many times before. "I worked 2 jobs to pay off the bills you racked up." Her response was a fumbled denial, words tumbling out in a flustered stream. "I needed that for emergencies. You think I wanted to take your money? It was a mistake, one I've paid for dearly." But it was too late. The floodgates were open, and like an overwhelming tide, the truth washed over the room. "How can you call this a mistake?" my aunt bit back, her voice straining under the weight of her outrage. "How many times have you taken from us, and when has it ever been repaid?" It felt like we were standing at the edge of a precipice, facing the monumental truth crumbling her carefully built empire of lies. The air was electric with clarity as I realized more than just a family meeting taking place. It was an invocation of justice. With each word spoken, the balance of power tipped further away from her. My mother's defenses crumbled like brittle leaves underfoot in October, her eyes darting wildly as she tried to regain control of the spiraling narrative. "I did it for your own good," she shouted, but even she seemed uncertain of her words. "For our good." I laughed bitterly, unable to suppress the mirth in my voice. "You mean you're good. You can no longer hide behind your lies." I glanced at the faces of my relatives, their expressions a mirror of my own feelings, a blend of disbelief and satisfaction, anger and resolution. It felt like we were no longer simply addressing her. We were exorcising the demons of our past, bringing forth the truth that had been buried for far too long. In that moment of unity, I felt like a phoenix rising from the ashes of my own oppression. It was invigorating. I wished I could bottle this feeling and carry it with me forever. With each confirmed accusation, every word met with agreement, her defenses caved further, the look of fury crumbling into panic. "You say we don't understand," my cousin added, her voice smooth but unwavering. "But I think the truth finally is pretty glaring right now. You have betrayed us in more ways than one." "You think we owe you respect?" I cut in, my voice steady and unwavering. "Respect is earned through love and honesty, not manipulation and deceit. You've chosen greed over your own family. It is time to face the music." My mother's breath hitched, and I could see her resolve faltering as if she were a ship taking on water. Her foundation was shaky, and the tide of discontent rose high, threatening to drown her in our collective outrage. Each word she had once wielded like a weapon was now turned against her, a haunting echo of her own making. As the voices around me grew louder, demanding she repay what she owed, I felt a sense of liberation wash over me. It felt strange, surreal even. This was no longer just a focal confrontation about money. It was the reclamation of our dignity, unraveling the threads of moral bankruptcy that had suffocated us for so long. I could finally breathe again, free of the suppression of fear and guilt that had weighed down upon my spirit. The collective strength of my family buoyed me, each voice blending into a chorus of justice that drowned out her muffled excuses. The rush of air felt refreshing. I finally felt seen, heard, and validated. Let this serve as a reminder. This behavior will not be tolerated again, my aunt asserted, the combined resolution of all of us like an immovable wall. The realization hit me like a wave crashing against the shore. A tidal change had taken place, and I could see it in everyone's eyes. My mother's reign of misuse and deceit was over. The accountability she had avoided for so long was finally landing squarely on her shoulders, and it was a moment to behold. "Do you think you can just walk away from this?" I felt my heart race as I spoke, my voice rising with a newfound authority. "You owe us. Give us back our money." "Please stop this," she pleaded, her voice breaking, tears glimmering at the corners of her eyes. "I didn't realize how much it affected you. I was lost." "Lost," I scoffed, incredulous. "You were never lost. You were choosing to be blind." Her tears only fueled the fire igniting the room, her pleas falling on deaf ears. The energy was undeniable, our collective desire for resolution palpable. The walls had eyes and ears, and they were listening. The demand for justice echoed around the room, and in this unified resolve, I felt more alive than ever before. The battle had finally shifted in our favor as we returned home that day. I could feel the subtle shift in the air around us, like the moment after a storm when the clouds part and a hesitant sun breaks through. The world felt different, lighter yet more complicated. My heart raced with a mix of emotions, and I wondered if everyone else could sense it too. I stepped through the front door of the house that felt more like a facade than ever before, a shell of comfort that had long protected us but was now riddled with the cracks of truth. "Are you okay, Mia?" my sibling asked softly, following behind me. Their voice pierced through the silence of the moment, reverberating in my thoughts. It was a valid question, yet I did not have the perfect answer. "I'm okay," I said, trying to keep my tone steady as I shook off the shadows of the confrontation we had. I caught a glimpse of pride in my sibling's eyes, a silent acknowledgement of the stand I had taken. For the first time, it felt like we were on the same side of an unspoken war that had been simmering for years beneath our roof. I glanced at my mother, who was standing just inside the doorway, her posture tense and rigid. She avoided making eye contact, her gaze focused intently on a chipped ceramic tile in the kitchen. It was as if she were trying to disappear into the floor, the weight of her actions evident on her face. The smothering silence stretched uncomfortably, each second filled with the phantom echoes of the accusations I had hurled at her earlier. The words were sharp and vicious, a defense mechanism that had finally had its day in the light. "You can't keep living this lie," I had said, my voice unwavering. The silence that followed was deafening, a wall erected against the truth I had been clamoring to expose. "Do you think she'll really follow through with the repayment plan?" my sibling whispered, breaking the stillness again. "I don't know. I hope so," I admitted, a tinge of doubt creeping into my voice, but I was determined to hold on to hope. "She has to understand that it's important for us to rebuild trust, and that starts with honesty." The tension in my body eased slightly as I vowed to keep that hope alive, a flickering flame against the darkened backdrop of betrayal. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in our home became thick with tension, a delicate dance of resentment and tentative understanding. Arguments often erupted like thunderstorms, the past crashing down upon us. On one such occasion, I confronted my mother again, the sting of betrayal still fresh. "Do you even realize what you've put us through?" I asked, my hands trembling in anger. "How can we trust you when you hide something so huge?" She sighed, turning her back to me as her shoulders shook slightly with suppressed sobs. "I didn't mean for it to turn into this," she said quietly, her voice choked with emotion. "I just wanted to give you both the best." I wanted to scream, to tell her that what we needed was her honesty, not material things. "The best! Look around! What good is all of this if I don't know if I can depend on you?" Her tears fell, droplets that carried the weight of all her choices, all the secrets. When my mother finally agreed to therapy, it was a breakthrough I scarcely believed would come. I spent hours researching local therapists, making calls and scouring online reviews. Each yes from receptionists felt like a small victory of its own, a step toward repairing the rifts in our family. When I told my sibling, I could see a twinkle of cautious joy in their eyes. "You really think this will work?" they asked, a hint of skepticism lacing their voice. I nodded, a wave of understanding washing over us. "It has to. We need to address this or we will sink," I replied, as hopeful as I could manage. "We can create a solid plan to help her repay the debts," I suggested, the wheels in my mind already turning, envisioning spreadsheets and a chart of payments. "It will take time," my sibling said thoughtfully. "But if we work on this together, I think we might make it." "Together," I echoed. Those simple words felt significant, forging an unwritten pact between us. As the weeks passed, I noticed a gradual change in my mother as she attended her sessions. Each week she returned home with a bit more lightness. One evening, we sat in the living room, the faint flicker of the movie playing on screen dancing across our faces. She turned to us, a strange vulnerability in her eyes. "I never realized how much I hurt the two of you." "I thought I was protecting you both," she confessed, her voice trembling. It was the first time I saw a glimmer of remorse shining through the facade she had always donned. "Protecting us?" I scoffed, ready to lash out. "This was the opposite of protection. You, the lies, the deception." I could feel my heartbeat echoing in my ears, almost drowning out her quiet words. But within my anger, there was a realization. Her journey to healing would not follow the path I wanted. "I don't expect forgiveness today. But I want a chance to make things right," she said, her eyes earnest. And within their depths, I caught the remnants of that mother I once adored. "We will need time," I replied, the edges of my heart softening a little. "I think it starts with you understanding how we feel." Days unfurled, and our family became enmeshed in this new routine, each therapy session swirling us into unfamiliar waters. Sometimes I felt buoyed, other times I felt like I could drown. Yet in every shared meal and reluctant conversation, financial honesty began to stitch our fractures. We started having discussions about money, spending thoughtfully instead of recklessly, each conversation less strained than the last. After some weeks, my sibling suggested a group budget meeting. It seems silly, but maybe we could use a visual aid, like a jar for different expenses so we can all keep track, they proposed, a hopeful spark igniting in their eyes. That sounds great, I replied, already imagining colorful labels for each jar, each a tiny step toward mending our family. Later that day, as I organized the jars, I found myself smiling, a silly grin that felt foreign. Perhaps small victories were the key. I could still hear my mother's voice, uncertain yet, as she whispered about her debt repayment plan. "I'll make it work," she said, and for the first time her words sparked a flicker of belief within me. As it turned out, creating the jars had a magic of its own. We dove into heated discussions about wants versus needs, our once complex relationship with finances ebbing into a shared understanding. "I want to save for a trip next summer. How about we allocate some of the budget for family outings?" My sibling proposed one evening. My heart warmed. This was a new kind of connection, built on honesty rather than avoidance or lies. Then came the evening when we sat down together to review our progress. My mother spoke up, the brave strength in her voice palpable. "I want to tackle the biggest debts first, to lift this weight off of all of us," she said, her determination resonating in the air. We nodded in agreement, the tension melting a little more. "It feels good to finally communicate." I marveled quietly, recognizing how these were the conversations we should have been having all along. With the passage of time, I noticed something else, a growing bond between my sibling and I, a scaffolding we were erecting to support each other. After our meetings, we would sneak out for ice cream, lingering over the sweet butterfat and hot fudge while trading stories. One night, wrapped in the comforts of our shared experiences, I glanced at my sibling, their laughter infectious. "What do you think Mom will do next?" they mused, playfully rolling their ice cream cone between their hands. "I honestly think she might surprise us," I said, my spirits buoyed by the unexpected ease of our interactions. "She's trying to change, and that has to count for something." It was in those small moments, nestled in laughter, that I discovered the power of reconnection. Realizing we could be part of a healing journey, moving from a shared past of deception to a shared vision of hope. I felt empowered in my decision, no longer bound to accept my mother's version of family love, which had hinged on extravagance and manipulation. The journey was far from over, a long, winding road stretching before us, but I stood stronger, a phoenix rising from the ashes of betrayal. No longer afraid to hold my family accountable, I breathed in the crisp air of possibility, allowing it to fill my lungs. Finally, I understood that I had won a battle not just for myself, but also for the family I wished to see thrive. A family built on open conversations and newfound trust, no longer chained to the grip of deception. The walls that had once separated us were coming down, each brick laboriously peeled away to reveal the potential of who we could become together. Together, we were stepping into a new chapter, one that promised to redefine what it meant to truly be a family.